Hi guys, we're back to learn more about how to write a equation in point slope form. Point slope form, remember, is one type of linear equation. That means an equation that when you go to graph it, you get a nice straight line. In yesterday's video, we learned about writing point slope form given a point and a slope. So it was pretty basic because we actually had everything that we needed to know to write something in point slope form. We didn't really need any extra information. We were given everything required. Today, I'm not going to give you the slope. Instead, for today's problems, we're going to be given 2 points, 2 ordered pairs. Now, our final answer still needs to be in point slope form. But because we're given 2 points, we're going to need to do a little bit of pre-work before we get our final answer. This problem says, write an equation in point slope form that goes through the given points, and then the given points are 3, 2, and 5, 8. Now, to write an equation in point slope form, you need a point, which we have. We actually have 2 of them, but you also need a slope. And so, as a pre-step before getting our final answer, when we're given 2 ordered pairs, the first thing that we should do is find the slope. We're going to use our slope formula. I hope that you're working on memorizing it. It is the most important formula of this chapter. Our slope formula says y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. In this equation, my y2 is 8 and my y1 is 2. My x2 is 5 and my x1 is 3. So 8 minus 2 and 5 minus 3. Then I do some math, right? So we're going to do 8 minus 2 and 5 minus 3. And as we've talked about in previous videos, you want to take your slope, and if you can simplify it, you do want to simplify it. So 6 divided by 2, we can simplify that into the number 3. So now I have my slope. Once you have your slope, you're ready to write an equation in point slope form. Actually, to write your equation in point slope form, you can almost just take what you have right here. So remember, when we're writing in point slope form, we're going to use our slope formula, but instead of putting a number at the beginning of the fraction, we're going to put a letter. So if I replace this 8 with a y, because y goes on top, and if I replace this 5 with an x, I'm actually now would be ready to write point slope form. So here's our starting equation for point slope form. We start with our slope formula. And instead of using y2 and x2, we just use the letters x and y. So y on top, x on the bottom. And look, though, how similar it is to what we started with, right? We had a minus 2, I have a minus 2. We have a minus 3, I have a minus 3. And then we set this equal to the slope that we found. Now, I do want to use the simplified version of the slope, so I used 3, or I like to write slope as a fraction, 3 over 1. We learned yesterday that the last thing we need to do for point slope form is we need to throw some parentheses around this and just slide it on up. And here is my final answer for writing equation in point slope form. Now, in these problems, there is a possibility to get 2 different answers, depending on which ordered pair you use for step 2. So I chose to use this ordered pair for step 2, and that's why I got this answer. An equivalent answer, a same answer, for the same line, we could have used this ordered pair. And so if you had used that ordered pair instead, your final answer would be y minus 8 equals 3 parentheses x minus 5. And it doesn't matter which ordered pair you use. You get to pick whichever one you want. I usually just pick the first one because that's how I kind of set it up in my slope formula right here. But it doesn't matter which ordered pair you use. All right, with that information, let's go ahead and have you try a couple on your own before you start your homework, just to make sure that you understand what you're doing. So pause the video, try these 2 on your own. Remember that you're starting, find the slope first, and then write me an equation in point slope form. Once you're done, you can restart the video and we'll check your answers. Make sure that you have answers to check before you listen to this next part. So here's what I got. Now I'm going to write both options, and you only have to have one of them written on your paper. So as long as you got one of the two options, you're good to go. Okay, so for problem number 1, here are my two options for my final answer. So you can see in both options that my slope that I calculated is 7/5. And then my first equation would be using this first ordered pair, and the second equation would be using the second ordered pair. And it doesn't matter, again, which one you wrote down, as long as you wrote down one of them. Notice that when it's a 0, we don't actually write -0 for our final answer. We do still put the x in parentheses, though. That's what kind of tells us that it's point slope form, is the x should always be in parentheses. All right, let's check that next one. Again, I'm going to put up both answers. The only thing the two answers will have in common is they should have the same slope, because I calculated one slope for this equation. So the slope that I got for question 2 is -5/2. You can see that in both equations. And then again, this first equation would have been if you used the first ordered pair. Or if you use the second ordered pair, then you should have gotten the second equation. Again, you don't need to write down both of them. You just need one of the two. Both of them would be considered correct, 100% correct, full credit on a quiz or test. But you don't need to write them both down. All right, guys, this concludes everything that you need to know at this point in time about point slope form. And next week, we'll learn some different linear equations.